Hello, buddy. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today, of course, is um, August the 28th, 2025. Of course, we're going to give people a chance to come in before we get started. As always, with a friendly reminder here, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people to engage, it'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, all right. So there we go. Then all right. Anyways, as I said, we're just going to give people a few minutes to come on in before we get started. Let me see. Anyways, I'm gonna. All right. Let's see now. All right. So lately, I've been getting back into playing some Pokemon Yellow. Trying to navigate through that. So that's been a bit fun learning everything as I've been going along. Also found out that you can find out just how to go through the game. The plot is on, of course, Bulbapedia. And just alrighty then. All right. So again, a friendly reminder to everybody: if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciative because for both my YouTube and Rumble viewers. Also, if anything here that we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, we're already past the 3-minute mark, so I guess I'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. So, got a couple of stories we're going to go over. Of course, the first one we're going to talk about is kind of an update on one that, of course, we talked about yesterday, one that's been talked about a lot this week. The whole Rampage Jackson, Psycho Stu, Nox Pro. We got some follow ups there, with some of the reactions to the situation. And then we'll also be covering an article from Bleeding Fool, Bleeding Fool, about how, I guess, one comic shop coming up with a way to try to bounce back, I guess. Also, of course, we'll have our usual wrestling wrap up, look back to last night's Dynamite, look ahead to tonight's Impact and Ring of Honor shows, so. And aside from that, then we'll of course finish things off with this day in each history. So, with all that being said, as we're we're like 4:40 here, so I guess I'll go ahead and get started on just I'll go ahead and get started on the articles here. Oh wait, oh yeah. All right. So the first thing we'll talk about, as I said, is the whole. Now everybody knows this because we already talked about the gist of it. Basically, Roger Jackson, the son of MMA and UFC fighter Quentin Rampage Jackson, and currently was an IRL streamer on Kick until they banned him. Was live streaming at an independent wrestling event over the weekend. Got into a bit of a situation with one of the wrestlers where some miscommunication happened. And as more footage has come out of the situation, there are many people calling for Raja to be arrested. Let's see. Psycho Stu is awake, and he's talking. So that's a positive sign after suffering the assault he did. Roger remained relatively quiet, but his dad is, his dad now, of course, it's natural. His dad's, gonna, back his son up here, but and thus far, Raja is not, even though many people are speculating that he will eventually be arrested, but as we mentioned, I think yesterday, there are some higher ups at Nox Pro who basically have been some higher ups at Nox Pro who basically who are trying to cover this up, as it were, as they basically, as we mentioned yesterday, had basically told their talent that if they are approached by any lawyers or any police involved in the investigation, to go to them first and have any comments basically go through Nox Pro. Let's see. And it was Doug Mallow who was the one who kind of exposed that to everybody about the little text message that he got. Now let's see. As of yet, Raja has not been arrested. They say it's only a matter of time. I guess the case is still under investigation, even though all the evidence is right there on video. So, let's see. There are some people who've come out and basically defending Raja. One of those individuals, of course, WWE legend, Hall of Famer Mark Henry. Now, Mark Henry did make a good point, but unfortunately, it's coming off as kind of cold. In that, at least from Nox Pro's side of it, they should have made sure that. They should have absolutely made sure that Raja knew it was a work and that he wasn't going to plan anything. Okay. But, it's like he stands behind his comment. But the thing is that, a lot of people still are taking it as him trying to, I guess, defend or justify Raja's what Raja did, and it is indefensible. He went in there, and it was clear because we saw numerous pieces of video evidence that he had every intention of really just crossing the line between kayfabe and reality. He went into that ring looking to. He wasn't just trying to be part of the show. He was out to hurt. He pretty much admitted it. You see him sitting there saying like, "Yeah, I'm gonna punch him for real. I'm gonna keep punching him." Now the guy who invited him to the event, AJ Mana. Here's one of the pieces of update on the story. So AJ Mana, who was the guy who invited him, and we saw in a video segment where AJ had basically kind of encouraged him to get his what they call his receipt in pro wrestling lingo, meaning a guy hits you, you hit him back. Telling you, yeah, I'll pull you off and everything like that. Well, AJ Mana has an update, I guess, happened within the last day or two. AJ Mana has since been fired from Nox Pro. Not only did he lose his job with Nox Pro, but he's also lost his job in real life, as I guess where he worked saw the story on TMZ, and they were not too happy about it, as it were. Basically, you got a situation where a lot of people are trying to wash their hands of this situation. We already know that WWE had cut ties with Nox Pro Academy, which, again, Nox Pro, one of the co-owners of it is Rikishi, former WWE legend, or WWE legend, father of course of the Usos, Solo Sikoa. But his promotion based in Southern California, where you basically, where all this happened. AJ Mana has since been fired, as many people believe that he was kind of egging the situation on. There's been a lot of backlash over it, over his involvement, over Mark Henry's comments. Even Quentin Rampage Jackson's attempt at contrition isn't really going over well with people. So it's basically, that's what it's coming down to. It's like basically, the case is still under investigation. A lot of people, as I said, are trying to just wash their hands of the situation, but it doesn't look like it's going to be going away anytime soon. So that's all I really got on that. So I guess we now move on to the comic story, as it were. And again, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, so we get some more friendly people to engage, I'd be appreciated. That goes for both my Rumble and my YouTube viewers. If you guys can, and of course, anything that we talk about here, if anything catches your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So with that, let's go ahead then and let me go ahead and pull up the next article, as it were. Now, the Roger Jackson stuff, of course, we weren't using an actual article. I was just going based off of some of the videos I've seen on some of the coverage of other people. But I watched enough of them to kind of get the gist of what was going on. So, anyways, here's the other news story we're going to cover tonight on the show here. From COVID to comics horror, why one comic shop survival plan raises eyebrows. Article by Avi Green, published earlier today. So this is an Avi article. It sounds like it's going to be somewhat critical, as is all of his stuff. But let's see what's going on here. So this is Avi speaking here. FFX Now spotlighted local specialty store Big Planet Comics in Fairfax County. Fairfax County, I believe, is in Virginia, I believe. Whose management tells how they've adapted to the times since the coronavirus fiasco 5 years ago, and yet it doesn't sound all that different from previous coverage of specialty stores. So now going to the FF Now article. This is from the article itself now. Kevin Panetta, a manager, has been at the shop for roughly 18 years, so since 2007, I guess. He's also the author of several comics, including The Excellent Bloom. Panetta, said he's watched the shop go through many changes in that time, most recently facing dual threats of online comics retail and COVID. I guess the idea threat of online comics retail, meaning that people are buying more of their books online than actually going to the comic shops. So, quote, the in bracket shops that remain are doing okay, unquote, Panetta said. Quote, the pandemic was rough on everybody, but we've seen stores shut down before that. We used to have the 3 shops in Vienna, unquote. Panetta says Big Planet has had to adapt to survive, taking advantage of a significant back issue inventory, getting involved in an indie book store crawl, and annually boosted by free comic book day. Quote, you can get in brackets back issues online, but you can't really browse them online, unquote, Panetta said. Quote, we're offering something people can't necessarily get on Amazon. In other words, you can make your purchases online, but if you want to take a preview look, see if you even want to buy it, you can't do that. So, and now here's Avi responding to what we just read there. I'm sure there's plenty that can be done to promote indie comics, but the whole talk of pamphlets again doesn't impress me when no questions are raised or whether such a format should be jettisoned in favor of paperback hardcover formats. And what's free comic book day done for comics in the long run? As previous news reports revealed, it never made much money for any involved. So how could it have done much for Big Planet either? And then when they talk about recommendations, it's the easy ones. Now back to the article here. When it comes to newer customers, both workers said they also really enjoy making recommendations. Quote, the thing I always ask is, in smaller quotes, what do you like outside of comics? In smaller quote. Because there's really every single genre, unquote, Panetta said. Quote, horror has been insanely good lately, unquote, Nicole added. Quote, there's been a couple writers doing a lot of great titles, and there's a lot more creativity in that section, unquote. They said Patrick Horvath's graphic novel, Beneath the Trees, Where Nobody Sees, about a serial killing brown bear, and even more grisly holiday horror. Okay. The Deviant have been, the grisly holiday horror, The Deviant, have been 2 of the most popular titles recently. Though they also enjoy making quote unquote weirder recommendations, like Grog the Frog. Quote, that feeling when someone picks up a book you recommend, that's great, unquote, Panetta said. Quote, that's the whole thing. Getting the feeling every day is so satisfying, unquote. So before we get to Avi's response, let me see if anybody's saying anything. I'd say no comments yet. All right. And we continue on here with the article then. All right, so When they start recommend, so let's see, this is Avi's response to what we just read. When they start recommending and sugarcoating the horror genre, that's decidedly when you know something's terribly wrong. Again, that's more Avi's opinion than because obviously there are people who do enjoy horror, much to Avi's chagrin. I mean, there are even people who enjoyed horror back in the golden age too. So, you know, um, well, if this is what's big at the store in focus, it only makes clear there is a serious problem at hand. Worst, it practically sounds like a lot of virtue signaling. At the end, though, they say, now I don't necessarily agree with him because again, I'm going on the understanding that despite Avi's own personal objections to darker stories, to more horror centric stories, there are people that there is a market for it. There are people who do want to read those stories. Whether or not doesn't matter if Avi or anybody else agrees or disagrees with that. There are people who do like to read horror. There's not anything, and as long as you understand it's fantasy and you don't sit there and try to go out and mimic the stories or whatever, you know, um, that's fine, you know. So then, at the end, though, they say one of the hardest parts, Panetta says, is the threat of burnout. Quote, you can also get kind of tired of reading comics, and that aspect can feel like as much of a job as the rest of it. When I feel like I have to read all the new things that come out, unquote, Panetta admitted. Yeah. Sometimes you know, when you're in a position like either you're a merchant like trying to sell a product or even from my perspective as a commentator, sometimes you have to you have to do all this stuff more for preparation for knowledge sake. Sometimes it can be a little draining, but doesn't mean you don't enjoy it any less. The best way to counteract that, both agreed, is going back to the comics they truly love. Quote, it's about reading stuff you actually like, unquote, Nicole said. Um, so now here's Avi's response to that. Well, in that case, why not recommend stuff that's more optimistic, like Superman of the past? Or why not argue why more needs to be done to improve how brighter angled storytelling is written up, and whether divisive politics should be avoided if that's what it takes to make it work effectively. Well, yeah, I mean, but then are these aside from promoting horror comics, I don't know if this particular comic book shop is actually promoting um you know promoting the divisive politics aspect of it. You know, as he puts it. Um, I don't think in this case, anyways. I'm sorry, but this is another example of store management not rising above the cliches. They're decidedly making a joke out of the medium and industry, and it needs to be changed to be more convincing. Um, yeah, maybe it would help. Well, for all we know, though, maybe they do. And here's another thing too. Maybe they do promote the brighter side stuff as much as the darker stuff. Here's another aspect to it. Maybe the only reason that we're hearing only about the darker stuff because that's what's being featured here, right? Maybe this particular author of the article that Avi's referencing, noted more the fact of their somewhat focus on horror, but maybe it doesn't necessarily absolutely mean that they've tossed aside the idea of recommending more, as Avi put it, brighter angled storytelling comics out there. So perspective is a very interesting thing. Unfortunately, Big Planet's management isn't succeeding at that so far. I mean, okay, does one of the things I would be asking Avi right here is, what's your basis for that statement? Do you actually have facts that prove that? Do you have the sales numbers to actually prove that, that pushing darker storytelling or horror comics isn't being as productive? Because there are people who do like to read, again, regardless of Avi's own personal opinion. There are people. Now, I'm not necessarily one of those either. Okay, I'm not saying I'm just basically analyzing what's being said here. Okay. Granted, I think if there is one thing I would somewhat agree with Avi on is that you should have more of a balanced recommendation sense. In other words, you should be you should not only be promoting the horrors if that's proving to be popular, but you should also and if the other side is being pretty popular too, like older Superman stuff, you should be promoting that too. You should be promoting it all pretty equally. Now, maybe this particular writer of this article that Avi's referencing, maybe they were the ones who were just focusing more on the darker stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that Big Planet is not promoting the brighter sided stuff. Anyway, so that's all we got for the stories tonight. Let me just try to find the cursor here so I can see what time it is. Okay. 20. We're coming up on 30 minutes here. So actually, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. I'll be right back, but I will put some music on while I'm gone. And when I come back, we'll probably start on the wrestling wrap up. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Oops, what the wrong thing there. Anyways. All right, so again, friendly reminder, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with that being said here, we're going to move on to the wrestling wrap-up now. As we already talked a little bit about some wrestling stuff in terms of the whole Roger Jackson Psycho Stu Knox Pro situation. We already talked about that earlier. I gave you guys an update on some of the stuff going on there. But so we're not going to really talk any more about that unless more comes of that. But anyways, as we now look ahead to as we look back to last night's Dynamite, coming out of the Forbidden Door pay-per-view that was held at in England this past weekend. So last night's Dynamite, which came in the 2300 arena in Philadelphia as part of the show. Of course, was on TBS. You had Excalibur, Ian Riccaboni, and Taz on commentary, and Don Callis as well. There was a bit of a tribute to Taz. Now the 2300 arena, for those of you who don't know, the 2300 arena is the current name of it, but it was once known as the CW arena. So anyways, the opening match on their show saw Jon Moxley of the Death Riders with Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta in his corner, defeating Daniel Garcia in a one-on-one match. Had Matt Menard in his corner. In a women's tag team match, Harley Cameron and former TBS champion Chris Statlander defeated Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. In an 8-man tag match, Don Callis family quartet of Josh Alexander, Hechicero, current AEW Unified Champion Kazuchika Okada, and former International Champion Konosuke Takeshita, with Wardlow in their corner, defeated Wardlow, who made his return at this past weekend's Forbidden Door, defeated the quartet of AEW World Tag Team Champions, Brodito of Ring of Honor World Champion Bandito and Brody King, and the team of Jet Speed of Speedball Mike Bailey and the Jet Kevin Knight, in a match for the AEW World Trios titles, the Ops of Powerhouse Hobbs, Katsuyori Shibata, and Samoa Joe defeated the Gates of Agony, or GOA as they're now called, I guess, Bishop Khan and Toa Leona and Ricochet to retain the titles. In the main event, saw Darby Allin defeat Death Riders Claudio Castagnoli in a Falls Count Anywhere match. So that's all I got for. So that's all I got for the. Of course, all I got for the recap. So now to look ahead to what's happening on tonight's Impact and also on tonight's Ring of Honor shows. As on tonight's Impact, as they continuing the fallout from last weekend's, not this past weekend, but the week before's Emergence pay-per-view. Coming from the Chesapeake Employees Insurance Arena, Baltimore, Maryland, with Tom Hannafin and Matthew Rainwell on commentary. The opening match of the evening will see Mike Santana and international and TNA International Champion Steve Macklin taking on AJ Francis of First Class and TNA World Champion Trick Williams. Eric Young of the Northern Armory will be taking on 1/3 of the Rascals, Myron Reed, who will have, of course, Zachary Wentz in his corner. The inspiration of Cassie Lee and Jesse McKay are set to take on, the inspiration being former TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Champions, are set to take on the Fatal Influence duo from NXT of Fallon Henley and Chad McNick. Fallon Henley being a former NXT Women's North American Champion. Coming off of his loss to the hometown man at the Emergence Countdown show, Ryan Nemeth was set to take on Eddie Edwards. Tasha Steeles of Order 4, with, of course, the great hands in her corner of Jason Hutch and John Schuyler, is set to take on Mara Sade, who we haven't seen in a few weeks here. And in a non-title tag team match, Jeff and Matt Hardy, the TNA World Tag Team Champions, will be taking on Cedric Alexander and X Division Champion Leon Slater in the main event. So that's all coming out of the fallout from all coming from the fallout from Emergence. So now we're going to look ahead also to tonight's Ring of Honor action on Ring of Honor Club. Of course, coming from the Wolstein Center in Cleveland, Ohio, on Ring of Honor, ROHWrestling.com, with Caprice Coleman and Ian Riccaboni on commentary. Opening match is opening match of the evening is set to see Lance Archer with Don Callis in the corner taking on Beef. In a women's match, former NWA World Heavyweight and World Tag Team Champion Allison Kay is set to take on former TNA Knockout, three-time TNA Knockouts former TNA Knockout World Champion Taya Valkyrie, who will of course have Johnny TV and the M&M collection in his corner. Okumura in a singles match between two CMLL stars. Okumura will be taking on Stigma. In a six-man tag match, you'll see Adam Priest and the Workhorsemen of J.D. Drake and Anthony Henry taking on the CMLL World Trio Champions in a non-title match of El Sky Team of Mascara Dorado, Mystico, and Neon. And in the main event, we'll see another six-man tag match or trios match. Gravity teams with the Von Erichs, Marshall and Ross Von Erich. They take on M&M TV of Johnny TV and Mason and Matt of the M&M collection of Taya Valkyrie. So quite a bit of Johnny, Taya, and M&M tonight on Ring of Honor. So with that being said and done, so that's all we got for the wrestling wrap-up, of course. So now what we're going to do is we're going to, of course, get ready to move on to this day in each history. Today being Thursday, August the 28th, 2025. Go ahead and take a look back at this day in each history. History 2000, 1995, I believe, right? Yeah, 1995, 2010, and 1965. So the first thing I would actually like to do is I'd like to wish a happy 60th birthday to Satoshi Tajiri. Now, the name may not sound familiar, but once I tell you what he's known for, you will probably oh yeah. Let's see. Well, let's get that up here. Happy 60th birthday to Satoshi Tajiri. Satoshi Tajiri was the man responsible for giving us Pokemon, and he's also the co-founder of Pokemon's company Game Freak. So happy 60th birthday to Satoshi Tajiri, who of course is the guy who gave us Pokemon. He's the creator of Pokemon, and also co-founded Game Freak. All right. So, anyways, get ready to move on to the next piece of niche history, as it were. As we move up to 1995, 30 years ago today. On this date in 1995, 30 years ago today, is something. Grab that. On this day in 1995, the 25th issue of Native Burn from Caliber Comics went on sale on this date back in 1995. So on this date back in 1995, 30 years ago today, the 25th issue, marking the halfway mark of this particular comics run that ran for 50 issues, Native Burn, the 25th issue of Native Burn from Caliber Comics, went on sale on this date back in 1995. It sold for $3.95 with 64 pages. There we go with that. We will now prepare to move on to the next piece in each history. Is that where? We move on to the year 2000. On this date in the year 2000, on this day in the year 2000, 25 years ago today, WCW had its Monday Night Raw paying a Monday Night, or WCW Monday Nitro had its Monday Nitro event from the Pan American Center in Las Cruces, Mexico. The main event of the evening saw Sting and the Great Muta go to a no contest. Also on the card that night in a also on the card on that night in a 10-man tag team elimination match, the Natural Born Thrillers, Chuck Palumbo, Mark Jindrak, Mike Sanders, Reno, and Sean O'Hare, with Sean Stasiak in their corner, defeated the Filthy Animals of Disco Inferno, Uvendu Guerrera, Conan, Rey Mysterio Jr., and Tigress. The first set of eliminations happened between Disco, Juventud, Conan, Ray, Palumbo, Mark Jindrak, Reno, Sean O'Hare were initially eliminated, and Mike Sanders eliminated Tigress at the very end. With Jeff Jarrett serving as special guest referee, Kevin Nash defeated Booker T. Now, this event, of course, this Monday Night Raw was, well, never mind. No, it wasn't following anything. It was just, but on this, but anyways, Kevin Nash defeated Booker T, become the new WCW World Heavyweight title at the time. And let's see, Rick Steiner defeated Mike Awesome in a bunkhouse brawl match. Lance Storm with the Elix Skipper in his corner defeated Sergeant AWOL with Corporal Cajun, General Rex, with the remainders of the Misfits in Action team in a tables match. In a House of Pain tag team match, Chronic went to a no contest with the Harris brothers. Chronic of Brian Adams and Brian Clark went to a no contest with Big Ron and Heavy D of the Harris brothers. also known as Ron and Don Harris, twins. In a three-way women's match, Tigress defeated Major Guns and Paisley. And the show opened up with a six-man tag match in which the Dark Carnival of Shaggy Two Dope, Vampiro, and Violet J, with Great Muta in their corner, defeated 3 count of Shane Helms, Evan Courageous, and Shannon Moore. And finally, moving on to the year 2010, as soon as I can find the cursor, of course. Now moving on to the year 2010. On this date, 15 years ago today, 2010. Let's see. Disney and Pixar's Toy Story 3 becomes the first animated film to gross over $1 billion. So on this date, 15 years ago today, Toy Story 3 from Disney and Pixar, the first animated film to gross over $1 billion. Basically meaning that's total money before deductions, before payouts, and all that. Total gross of $1 billion. First animated film to do that on this date in 2010. So with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we're back here with more Niche News tomorrow. Of course, we'll look back to tonight. We'll look back at tonight's Impact and Ring of Honor. Look ahead to this upcoming weekend's activities, including, of course, WWE SmackDown, AEW's Collision, and then, of course, ultimately Clash in Paris coming up this Sunday. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and well, of course, I'll have Rick Piper with me on Sunday for the historical comic retrospect as well. Just a quick reminder on that. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow.